Hello, I'm Liz Van Vliet, and welcome to the Assist with Impact podcast. Join me as I explore the competencies and capabilities that allow you to assist with impact. I'll be sharing practical tips, strategies, and insights that will help you move beyond what I call the order taker zone and be that little hinge that can swing big doors. If you're ready to be more proactive and have more impact in your role, then this is the place for you. Let's get started with the episode. Well, hello, lovely listeners, my lovely podcast listeners. Welcome to episode 170 of the Assist with Impact podcast. This week, it's all about managing your manager using my 3 Ps. When I survey assistants, one of the top 3 challenges that I hear you struggling with consistently is managing different needs and priorities across individual executives and when you're managing multiple managers, multiple executives, and similarly, understanding competing priorities. It's causing you stress and anxiety, and it contributes to that sense of overwhelm that I hear from you. So I've been teaching assistants a simple framework for building and maintaining your understanding of your manager's priorities, preferences, and what I call their pet peeves for quite a few years now. I call it my 3 Ps for managing your manager. I first discussed it on the podcast way back in 2020, but I am aware that I have loads of new listeners, lovely listener, and you may not have heard me discuss it. And I also have listeners who've attended some of my training and will have heard me discuss this concept, but you might not have implemented it. So here is your gentle encouragement to listen to this episode and think about going and having a 3 Ps conversation with your manager. What I love about this approach is that it sets you up for new relationship success, and it can be used, and I have used it with assistants, to help them reset existing relationships and get them onto a more stable footing in terms of communication and expectation management. So let's start with the elephant in the room, or doing away with the fantasy that I find really frustrating. It really gets up my goat when I hear assistants on podcasts or on interviewed in places where they are priding themselves on creating this illusion with their manager or with other stakeholders that they are mind readers, that they are somehow magicians, that they have mystical psychic powers. You are not a mind reader. There is an expectation that as an assistant, you need to be fantastic. You need to be able to possess these psychic wizardry powers and don't need to ask a lot of questions, and you will still be capable of getting all the things done at all the right times with all the right information and all the right people for your boss, for your manager. But we all know that it's not that simple. And the truth is that you do need information and insight, and yes, experience, because it doesn't come naturally. It takes time to build confidence, to be able to assert yourself and ask some of these questions. But it's going to set you up for long-term success when you begin and continue, start to begin the way you want to continue. So the 3 Ps are preferences, priorities, and pet peeves. So in actual fact, I often joke that there's actually 4 Ps because there's preferences, P, priorities, P, and pet peeves with 2 Ps, but I'm going with 3. Anyway, pet peeves, just in case you're somewhere in the world where you're thinking, what is Liz talking about? What is a pet peeve? A pet peeve is, well, I'm going to go through it. So just hang on to your hat. So let's start with preferences. When I'm talking about preferences, I'm talking about how your manager likes things to be done. In an ideal world, how they prefer to be communicated with. What is their preferred communication style? How do they prefer to have information land? When do they prefer to take breaks? What do they like to do when they have a break, for example? How do they like to have their calendar structured? Are they a visual person? Do they like lots of colours? Or are they somebody that just prefers it very plain and simple? How do they like their meetings to be set up? What do they like to see in a meeting notice? What is the information that they would like to see? What is their preference? Those are all examples of preferences. All of these are preferences that make your manager feel more productive, more effective, and they help them feel like they're on top of their game when you guys are working in sync and they're not having to ask you to do things a certain way. So you knowing those individual preferences is going to help you show up as a linchpin assistant. It's going to help you show up as effective and efficient and proactive. But in order for you to find out the preferences, you need to use your observation skills. You need to look and learn from working with that person, but you also need to be willing to ask. I'm going to come back to the asking. Let's move on to priorities. They're self-explanatory on one level. What does your boss need done? What does the team need from them? What do other stakeholders need from them? And which of these things do they see as the top of their list right now? Priorities are constantly changing. They're not a static thing. I did some training last week, and one of the things that I did was get the assistants in the training to tell me, in terms of Stephen Covey's matrix of, productivity matrix, where are your managers spending too much time now? And a lot of the assistants had managers that were spending too much time in the quadrants that are actually not ideal, according to Stephen Covey. Now, one of the ways that you can use these 3 Ps is to help redirect your manager to keep them in those productive and effective quadrants that Stephen Covey recommends that we want to be working in. So that's part and parcel of this 3 Ps. On the one hand, it's about getting the information, and then on the other hand, it's about using the information. It's about using the information to ensure and establish checking in with them and having an ongoing dialogue with them so that you can use the 3 Ps to help protect their time and their energy. Now, let's talk about those pet peeves, those infamous pet peeves. So the pet peeves are the things that get somebody's blood boiling. They're the things that irk someone, annoys them. They might not tell you, but it actually irritates them. So things that could set them off, that pushes their buttons. And if I was asked to ask you right now to write down for me, what are your boss's pet peeves? Could you do it for me? And would you be informative on that topic? Is there stuff you don't actually know? Is it a question you've ever actually asked them? Who do they need to be protected from in your organisation or externally? Maybe it's a vendor. Maybe it's an external vendor salesperson that they just find a time waster or is just constantly wanting to try to sell them something. That's information that you might have made an assumption about, but you don't actually know until you have a conversation. Who do they need to minimize their exposure to? Who do they want to maximize their exposure to in terms of preferences? So that's the yin and the yang of preferences and pet peeves. But getting them to open up about it is going to help you flesh out your understanding and insight into them as leaders and as individuals. And if we go back to my linchpin model, and you know that I have 5 layers in my linchpin model, and one of those is your leader insights. These 3 Ps, this 3 Ps for managing your manager and having this conversation and having documented your 3 Ps. It's not for everyone's consumption. You may want to give a filtered, edited version of it to somebody that's sitting in your chair during a period where you're absent for annual leave or for development, whatever it might be. But having a documented 3 Ps is really important for helping you have a full and comprehensive insight into your leader. So, I want you to spend some time documenting the 3 Ps. I want you to keep it handy. Keep it in a OneNote drive, wherever you want to keep it. But I also want you to have a proactive conversation. It's a new year. We're only, yes, we're coming up to the end of February, but we're still in the first quarter. It's a great time for you to be sitting down with your boss and checking in with them on their 3 Ps going forward. And as I said, it's a dynamic document. I have, when I do training and when I work with assistants in my coaching programs, I do provide them with a template and with a framework for setting up this conversation. So a workbook and a guide that helps to set up this 3 Ps conversation, the questions you can ask, and how to use open-ended questions to get your leader, to get your manager, to help them clarify and communicate their 3 Ps. I also work with you on how to use the 3 Ps discussion as a living document, to circle back to it when you see that something is occurring that is inconsistent with what they've communicated to you in one or other area. And this is where those power skills that I train you in come into play. So, for example, number 8, fostering curiosity for insights. Because when you notice that they're out of alignment with what they've identified in their 3 Ps, that's where you don't approach it in a judgmental way. You approach it in a curious way. Because what you're doing is proactively managing their time and attention. So putting the 3 Ps into practice takes practice. And if you're wanting to be kept informed of when I'm going to be announcing, just a spoiler alert, that is coming up in the next few months, some opportunities to get some vitamin Liz in your day via my membership platform or training programs, please make sure that you're subscribed to my email newsletter. You can sign up by going to my website, myeacareer.com, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and the sign up form is right there. It's very simple. You're just opting in for my email newsletter. That is all I have for you today. So as we approach the end of February, 2 months down, 10 to go, I'm sending you out all my warmest regards and best wishes for March, and I will look forward to bringing you another podcast episode in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see the show notes, head over to my website. It would be great if you haven't already done so. If you enjoyed the show, if you could kindly go to iTunes and leave a review. It helps other people find the show. Thanks for listening and have a great week.